I know dark clouds gather around me. My way is rough and steep.
Hey guys, so I haven't done a video in a while, but I thought it'd be the right time to. Coming off of playing The Last of Us Part 2, just having beat it recently, I thought I'd just talk about mostly the story. I'm gonna definitely dive into spoilers just to talk about what I liked and what I didn't like for the most part. So and this is really gonna be tough to talk about, because there's a lot to dissect. So starting off the game on Thursday night, I had the game pre-ordered digitally, so I wanted to play it right away, and a few hours in, Joel gets killed off right off the bat. I didn't know what to say, playing through that. And I even saw the spoiler leaks, so I knew Joel was gonna die, and it still made me feel some type of way. It feels a lot different when you take the game into context, right? When you're playing through it, it's a totally different atmosphere, and you feel more engrossed and more engaged, and it really hurt. I'm not gonna lie to you. After playing through that, just seeing that on display, how he was killed, how quick he was killed. People were saying he had it coming, and I know for all the actions he did in the first game, it was karma. I get that, but we've created a bias, playing through the first game. We were playing as Joel, so it's hard to not feel some type of way when you see Joel Miller killed off like that. Even though he is an anti-hero, you still feel some sort of empathy to why he did what he did. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to play through the game after Joel was killed that night. I think I turned it off as soon as Ellie got to have her last moments paying tribute to Joel. I've never done that for any huge title on day one. Just playing a few hours and then just not continuing after that. But the only reason I kept going is because I wanted the game story to pitch to me to why Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog, why they had Joel Miller written off like that. Even though it was so quick, I needed a reason. That's why I kept playing. And also the fact that this was still pretty early on, and so I never got to see some of the gameplay mechanics fully fleshed out yet, so I really wanted to try that out. So I continued on, and the pacing, I think pacing is really, really important. And with The Last of Us Part 2, I appreciate the story that they told me anyway, and what I got to experience. But I think the pacing was just off. I don't know what it is. I think there was just a bit of fat that they could have cut out, a bit too much content that wasn't necessary. For Abby, I'm gonna delve into spoilers right now. But for Abby, you get to play as her in the second half of the game, right? And she is the antagonist to Ellie because of murdering Joel, right? I feel like parts of her side of the story could have been cut out or toned down. For one, the amount of times, I get it. I get what they're trying to do here with Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog. They're trying to enhance our empathy towards Abby and her friends, right? But the constant experiences of her visiting Owen over and over, I feel like that could have been toned down just quite a bit, right? Because I think it's 3 times that Abby visits Owen in a structure that I also had a problem with, which was these flashback sequences. It was notorious. Like, constant flashbacks ruined the pacing of this game. The story was good. It's just the pacing was way off, and it just kind of makes the story delivered in such a way where it's not something nice to go through or nice to experience. At least not more than once. Like The Last of Us Part 1, like I played through that so many times with the story intact. But for this one, it's just Abby constantly visiting him and then having, those flashback sequences. It just became overwhelming, and it doesn't help that you're doing it in a environment that's always raining in Seattle, right? And to have that theme of hatred combined with it, meshed with it, it just becomes a bit of a drag, right? And a bit overwhelming. It's not an easy game to go through. There's also the part with Abby where she meets these 2 other characters named Yara and Lev. I actually like those 2. There's a part where she has to find supplies for Yara because poor Yara, her arm gets quote unquote clipped by their former group, the Seraphites, that they this weird religious cult that they used to be a part of, right? And so her arm gets broken by being hammered on, and so her arm is all red and it just looks like it's not functioning anymore. And so she develops a compartment syndrome, right? And so as Abby and Lev, her brother, they're requested to find a specific amount of supplies for Yara in order to perform a surgery on her so that they can amputate, that dead arm that Yara has. I feel like that was unnecessary too, because I feel like some of the supplies, I was looking at it carefully, like I feel like some of the supplies we probably already had in our bag. Like playing through it in normal setting, you can find supplies pretty moderately, and so I felt like seeing scissors and seeing like blade on the list like of things required to perform that specific surgery. Like I feel like we could have done it then and there, but I don't know. I guess it was necessary for Abby to develop a relationship with Lev. To be honest, it totally, I could see the resemblance of Joel and Ellie, how their relationship kind of bonded in the first Last of Us. It's part of the reason why I liked Lev being a companion to Abby. I just feel like just getting the supplies was unnecessary. So there's a lot of things that they could have cut in content in order to make The Last of Us Part 2 just as concise and just keep it contained and not sporadic like The Last of Us Part 1. I feel like they could have done it just as equally as good. It's just, I don't know, there's just so many perspectives, and there's just so many side characters as well. Side characters that I didn't really care about. On Ellie's side, like with Dina and Jesse, he was just unnecessary as well. I get it's for the camaraderie and the chemistry that he had with Dina and Ellie, how it's supposed to, there's a bunch of mirroring factors between Abby and Ellie, and I think that's a creative part of the game. I feel like that part of playing as the antagonist, right, and seeing and having her be the mirror of Ellie, and having their side characters mirror each other as well, their life experiences. But the side characters were just not strong enough for me, like Jesse and Dina, right? Like Dina has a purpose later on once Ellie kind of grows up a bit and Dina has her baby, right? I think that's important. But then talking about the other side characters that were weak, Manny, maybe it's just me, I didn't really care at all. Like after he spat on Joel, I just wanted him to die right there. No matter how many jokes he had with Abby, like I get it's to show that Abby had people she cared about too. I get that, but I didn't care at all for Manny. So when Tommy shot him in the head, like I was actually cheering that Manny had died savagely. There was also Mel, like she was also like a mirror to Dina because she was also pregnant with Owen's baby. So there's this weird love triangle as well. So you've got Jesse, Dina, and Ellie, right? So Jesse used to be with Dina, but then he was all chill about it for some reason. But he gets Dina pregnant, and so that kind of creates a conflict. And then now you've got this love triangle in Abby's group with her, Mel, and Owen. Owen having Mel pregnant, but then he still longs for Abby. It's just I get it's to show the duality of how similar Ellie and Abby are, how much they reflect each other, and still have so much hatred in their heart for each other, for killing people that they really cared about on both sides. But I didn't really care about most of the side characters except for Yara and Lev. Those were the only two that I really cared about because they were essential to Abby's growth, to Abby's newfound empathy, being able to care. I don't know, it's just so many sporadic perspectives, and it's not as contained as part one. That's my problem with how this story was told, especially with the flashback sequences. The only time I liked the flashback sequences were with Joel, because he was like the light of the game. Like, this is a depressing game, and with the theme of hatred being constantly being displayed on screen, every time Joel showed up, it was kind of calming, even though there was some tough moments as well with Joel, with his revelation to Ellie, finally revealing to her what he did in The Last of Us Part 1, that in his selfish act, saving her from the Fireflies, because it wasn't guaranteed that they would find a cure, and so he had his resolve, and he told her that, and it just broke Ellie. To me, it was just always nice to see Joel, because we were never going to play as him again, right? So it was nice to be able to see how he interacted with Ellie in this part 2 of the game, and how their relationship kind of got strained after Joel had admitted to lying to Ellie to save her, right? And I think that's, ironically, in a way, the calming part is knowing how they were after that, even though it wasn't really a good relationship. But yeah, so just to try and recap, what I didn't like is some parts of the story, how it was told, how there was some things that they could have toned down or not include at all in the game. Also, the story was too long. It's not something to digest. And I think this game, normally the length to beat it is around like 25 to 30 hours. So that's a long time for a single player game, especially a third person like action stealth game like this. That's really, really long, right? And I think cutscenes in total is like 10 hours. So that's a lot of stuff, a lot of content that's overwhelming in this game. So yeah, those were some of my problems, but I think I appreciate the story that was told. Just I didn't like how it was told, and some things they could have toned down. What I do love about the story, right, is the point about revenge, right? And I think everyone knows revenge is never fulfilling, even if you get what you wanted, an eye for an eye kind of thing. Like it never really heals you. I think this is a good part of the story, and also devastating is like seeing Tommy after he has been damaged by Abby, healing from his gunshot wound to the eye, to the head, and not being able to walk normally anymore. I think the devastating part is that, and also he broke off his relationship with Maria, as he says to Ellie when he visits her in her and Dina's new house. The constant want of revenge starts to take its toll. I think that's a good thing in showing how devastating it is through Tommy, who's Joel's brother, who's been wanting to just get back at Abby. I think that's a good thing to show, especially for Ellie too. You start to see, you think that she settled down in her new house, but then she starts to develop this PTSD while she's holding her baby, or Dina's baby, in the barn, and she starts to go havoc, like haywire. Just all these little things that remind her of how Joel was killed, and she never really got over that. And so she starts to go back again. She starts to think about, what Tommy said, and she still yearns to end Abby for what she did to Joel. And I think it makes the point across, right? Because at that point, like, I was just exhausted, right? Like, I already talked about, like, how the pacing was pretty bad. Some unnecessary points in the story weren't needed, and some of the side characters weren't as memorable. And then the flashback sequences of the story structure, the fact that it's a long game too. At this point, when Ellie arrives in California to try, because she has her lead on Abby again, by that point, like, I don't know if it was intentional. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but as Ellie, I wasn't feeling that lust for revenge anymore. And I think, like, by the time we got to California, it's like, really? Like we have to play through this too? Like, after thinking we've settled down. I think they made their point across, is what I'm trying to say. This whole lust for revenge isn't worth it. And you get to see that happen once, she has her final fight with Abby before they escape from the Rattlers, like this other weird group in California that they come across, unfortunately. So they have their final fight, and then Abby, bites off Ellie's fingers, and that was one of the many costs of Ellie's, revenge for Abby, right? It's like she couldn't play the guitar anymore. One of the most important things in her life that was, taught to her by Joel. Joel taught her how to play the guitar, and Abby biting off her fingers, like, disabled her from ever playing the guitar right ever again. And I think they did the ending so well, and they got that point across so well that revenge isn't worth it sometimes, you know. And I know people had a problem where it's just like, wow, you know, they lead us all up to this point. You know, you could have just ended Abby right then and there. You had so much stakes build up. But I think this is why one of the few flashback sequences that I really appreciated with Joel is when Ellie starts to see that before she even tries to drown Abby, she has the opportunity, because, you know, Abby is so weak, you know, being hung on this wooden pole by the Rattlers in California, and she just looks weak, right? And this is Ellie's opportunity to finally end her. But I think this is one of the few good uses of the flashback where she sees Joel in that 1 second and then she changes her mind. And I feel like that's enough in her change of heart, where she's just like, it's not worth it anymore, you know. That last scene was just so, I think, one of the most unforgettable scenes in this story in part 2, when it starts to play out. So in that flashback where she kind of stops, where it prevents her from ending Abby, you get to see it fully played out, and it turns out to be a last conversation between Joel and Ellie. This was pretty devastating, only because we know it's the last conversation with Joel and Ellie, and it's also the fact that, you know, they also converse again about Ellie's point of view of, you know, her life could have meant something if she gave her life to those fireflies so that they could develop a cure. And then, you know, I could kind of see it from Ellie's point of view, because she's seen so much shit happen. It's not a great world to be in, right? Everyone is just in different groups now. It's not even state by state. It's not even by country. It's like groups by groups, one state. And it's tough. And she wanted to end all that, right? And I could see it from her point of view. But then Joel, I was also happy when Joel said this. Like, he said something along the, I'm just paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, you know, if the Lord gave me the chance again, like, I would do it all over again, 1,000 times. And it kind of broke me. It was nice to see that both their arguments in such minimal dialogue, you know what I mean? And it is such a strong scene. You know, Ellie, I think this kind of made me tear up a bit when Ellie was just like, I don't know if I'll ever forgive you for that. But then she considers it. She says maybe one day. And then this just had a tear in my, like, I've never really teared up in any video game ever. I think there's some games where I almost did, but I'm usually pretty good. But I think what made me tear up a bit was seeing Joel, like, tearing up. And he's just like, I'd like that. You know, this is a flashback sequence, and I think that's what kind of makes it so tragic and so sad. Is just, you know, Ellie never got to really tell Joel herself how much she really appreciated him, right? And how much he meant to her in her life. Like, in a way, when Joel says that, you know, I would do it all over again, that's his way of saying he loved Ellie. But Ellie never got to say it back to him in a way. And I think that's what kind of made me well up a bit. And why I think they close the story off pretty good. It's the consequences of Ellie's actions. That's what makes part 2 still so amazing with its resolution. Even though midway of how they told the story was kind of wonky and weak, pacing was kind of off, but I think they capped it off pretty well. Maybe not as well as part 1. I think that's like almost near flawless, but here I think they still managed to tell it pretty well. And what I loved about the ending is, you know, Ellie not being able to play the guitar, and something so symbolic of Joel. She leaves the guitar behind in that abandoned house. I didn't really get to say Dina, like coming back to that house, Dina left. You know, she wasn't willing to wait for Ellie to come back. And so coming back there and trying to play the guitar in an empty house, like those are all collective consequences of Ellie's actions, you know, on her path for revenge. It costed her. And I think Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog capped off the story in part 2 pretty well. So yeah, those are just, you know, some of my thoughts on my overall story of the game. If I would have to grade this, since I'll probably make review videos again, the story, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I haven't talked about the gameplay yet, so I'll probably make another video for that, because this video is long. But for the story in this game, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I don't think it's a masterpiece because of how it was told and some of the content that they could have toned down just quite a bit, and the constant flashback sequences, the structure of it. So that's what I would grade The Last of Us Part 2 story is an 8 out of 10. Not as near flawless as Part 1, not as contained and concise as Part 1. I still do like the creative aspect of trying to play in the antagonist point of view. It just sucks that that element of surprise was ruined by, you know, the leaks. It's not a perfect story, but I do like how it capped off pretty well. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the story. I'll probably come back with a gameplay video of what I think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my big talk about the story and with the spoilers. So appreciate you guys if you watch this video. I also welcome any type of opinion, whether you hated the game or loved the game. If you have any opinions, just leave your feedback in the comments down below of this video. Definitely, surely will read them. So, because I probably missed some things that I didn't get to talk about in this video. So yeah, appreciate it, and peace.